All right, all right. Well, welcome everyone. Hello, I'm Claire Jones, owner of Liminal Clarity and the Change Guide for Growth for high achieving women going through times of change, stress, and or transformation. And we are jumping on today to present the much anticipated Transformative Nourishment workshop with my co-host, Mollie Crittenden, integral
Hello.
life coach, anti-racist facilitator, consultant, and educator. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Claire. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited to dive into this stuff. And this is a workshop for positive change makers who want to cultivate self-supportive wellness practices that support you in showing up powerfully and effectively. So first, Mollie is going to be introducing the connection between self-care and self-resourcing and our capacity to have positive impact on others and the world around us. Then I will be discussing the 7 areas of wellness practices to prioritize in your life for optimal performance. And then finally, Mollie will be wrapping things up with a discussion on how self-awareness, mindfulness, and internal healing work supports our ability to show up for others in alignment with our intentions, right? All right, let's dive in.
Yeah. Thanks, Claire. So I am just so enthused about this topic because of the fact that, my life's work and passion is really around centering those folks in the world, especially those who are showing up for others in your life work, those who are in healthcare, social services, educators, nonprofit, in social or environmental justice work, those of you who really just care about making the world a better place and supporting you in being able to really, really connect with your greatest potential and power, and guiding and giving you tools and resources and practices in your journey of self-actualization and being able to show up in your greatest ways of being. And I also have a particular passion around racial justice, and so I love facilitating, especially other white folks. I identify as a cisgender white woman. So really supporting those of us who care about racial justice, who identify as white, to unlearn many of the ways that we have been socialized in relation to different forms of oppression, to really kind of liberate ourselves from those. And I want to just start a little bit about my own journey and my own background and how I came to understand some of what I'm going to be sharing today. So I came to the work as a coach and a facilitator, actually as an educator in the K-12 educational system. So for over 20 years, I taught in different kinds of elementary, middle, and high school settings, and became a teacher because I wanted to create greater equity through my role as a teacher in how I was empowering students to live into their best selves. And with this heart and intention as an educator, I worked so hard. I just poured so much of my time and my energy into my classroom, into my students, into my teaching. And in that kind of work and giving so much of myself every day, over time, what I started to realize was that there were ways in which I was making positive impact in my work, and loved the work that I was doing as a teacher, but also started to really become more aware of a real ongoing way in which I was beginning to experience depletion. And so working long hours, I'm also a single mom. So after teaching all day, going home and being present with my boys and doing so much for others all the time was a gift, and was actually beginning to really deplete my own energy level. And so what I started to realize was that in being under resourced within myself, I was actually showing up in presence in a way that was was contradicting what I was really hoping to do in my capacity as an educator and as a mother. So I was noticing things like just being tired in my work, and being like impatient with students, and inflexible, and just having a certain level of just kind of being cranky, even though I had these great lesson plans that I had stayed up all night, creating with this social justice focus. And also there was this way in which my working so hard was actually a manifestation of an internal perfectionist way of being with myself that was kind of always there. So driving me to push through even when I was tired. And with that real kind of perfectionist way of being, there's also an inner critic. So self-judgment, especially when making mistakes, and not being gentle with myself, and sometimes that kind of judgment also being externalized, so comparing myself to others and judging others. And so there was this other side of my experience, even in my greatest intentions, that was really limiting my capacity to show up in this very grounded presence that could be flexible, that could be creative, that was able to tap into my intuition in the moment to really respond to what was happening in my classroom or with parents or colleagues in the school community in a way that was empowering to myself and empowering to others. So really seeing that I was limited in my capacity to do that, and starting to realize that that was connected to the fact that I myself was so under-resourced, and not prioritizing my own self-care. And so it was at that point that I really began to seek out opportunities for learning how to shift this way of being within myself, because I wanted for what I was actually able to do to be in greater alignment with what I knew I cared most about, right? And so that when I entered in that realm of personal and professional development is when I actually experienced the greatest transformation in my own capacity, as in every realm of my life. So as an educator, as a racial justice activist and facilitator, as a mother, a friend, this kind of integrative and holistic work on myself was, I saw how it was positively impacting what I was able to do in every realm of my life, which was really, really powerful. And so it was through that journey that I really began to have the vision for really being able to work with other folks who had some kind of similarity in their own journey as myself, to be on a path in realizing the power and the potential of our own transformational nourishment. And I just want to actually share some wisdom that came from other folks in my learning along the way that speaks to what I'm talking about in my own story. And the first person's wisdom that I really want to share here is, forgive me, we're on the oops, wrong slide. Hey, Claire, do you think you could share the slides? Because I think I am beginning on the slide here we go. Okay, I think here we are. All right, so I wanted to share this bit of wisdom from a longtime educator and facilitator focusing on social justice, whose name is Lillian Roybal Rose. And she is now retired, but she was the teacher and mentor of another really, really powerful woman who is continuing the work of racial and social justice in this holistic and transformational way, named Nancy Luna Jimenez. And she runs the Luna Jimenez Institute for Social Transformation, who I will give you links and resources around at the end of this time. But Lillian Roybal Rose has this bit of wisdom here that no movement, and I really believe that the word movement here can be substituted with any community that you're a part of. So no classroom, no school community, no work environment, you name it, family system. So no movement that you are a part of will be any healthier than you are. And Lillian really understood here the interconnection between our commitment to our own holistic healing, self-nourishment, self-awareness, and ongoing liberation from our socialization around all of the isms, and what we are trying to do in the world in connection with others. And so this was one real aha moment for me that made me really, really understand that my work begins with myself, and that work is what will ultimately change the world, or is the foundation for it. And in one really, really influential aspect of my own ongoing learning has been in my involvement also with the Untraining. And the Untraining is an organization whose mission it is to heal personal and social oppressions. And I've had the great fortune of not only being a participant, but also being a facilitator and lead teacher with the Untraining for about a decade now. And Rita Shimon, who you see here, is one of the co-founders of the Untraining. And she is someone who embodies what it is to be a liberated soul and human being on this earth. And she has this quote that guides me still, that is at the bottom of the screen here, which is that loving yourself is a political act. So really acknowledging the connection between the personal and the political. She says, we are taught not to love ourselves, and from that place, we are easily manipulated. Love yourself so much that this love changes the world. Mm. And another quote that she actually says often to us as the teachers in the Untraining to remind us is that we are the healing environment. So she really has emphasized for us over time about what we embody, the presence that we bring is actually modeling and holding space and energetically creating a space that is either healing or not. And so what Claire and I are here today to share a bit with you about is really some specific tools and understandings that can support you all in stepping into greater power and presence and being the change that you want to see in the world, as many of us know from Gandhi himself, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pause here and really turn things over to Claire, because I really want to hear from you about some of the understandings and practices that you know to start us off in this learning about what it looks like to put this kind of transformational nourishment into practice into our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, I absolutely love that quote, is loving yourself is a political act, because self-love, I mean, especially in our capitalistic economy, like the amount of companies out there that bank on you not loving yourself is extraordinary. So I'm super happy to jump into this topic with you today. And you know, if you haven't met me before, my name is Claire Jones. I'm an owner of Liminal Clarity, and I am the Change Guide for Growth. So I basically use a multidisciplinary approach that provides stability and support for high-achieving women during times of change, stress, and transformation. And that means both for yourself and the world around you, because this can be internal change and it can be external change. But how exactly did I get here? You know, that's the story that people often ask about, is why did I end up where I am today? And I've basically been an entrepreneur since 2014 when I opened my first business. It was a brick and mortar retail store devoted to local goods. And it was my crash course in all things business. And while I did learn a whole lot of stuff, I also made a whole lot of mistakes along the way. And the most painful of which was burning myself out. So, like, those days that you say, I just can't handle it anymore, my plate is too full. Or maybe you say, I just want some breathing room for once. Or I know we all do this, is sacrificing your sleep just to squeeze in another hour or two of me time. And there's actually a term for that if you haven't come across it. It's called revenge procrastination bedtime. You are procrastinating on your bedtime because you want revenge me time instead. And I've totally been there. I always thought that I had to hustle 24/7 to make things happen. And in my first business, I soon found myself working 60 hours a week by myself in a white box surrounded by inventory I couldn't sell at the time. And after 2 years of that, I was done. I was just done. I was burnt out. I was exhausted, miserable, lonely. It was just awful. And I was completely burnt out because my brain had hit a wall. I wasn't working at my optimal brain capacity. I wasn't working at my optimal brain performance levels. I wasn't able to show up as my best self on a day-to-day basis. And one thing that really helped me get out of this funk was this awesome tool that I talk about a lot, created by the Neuroleadership Institute. It is called the Healthy Mind Platter. I will get on my soapbox for this framework all day, every day, because I love it so much. And it really helped me realize that I needed to prioritize these things in my life and actually commit myself to optimal brain productivity. And I come back to this framework every time that I feel that sense of heaviness, when I feel burnt out, desperate, or frustrated, overwhelmed. I often get asked, like, what is a tip to do when you have a lot on your plate and you're feeling overwhelmed? And it's like, the Healthy Mind Platter is always my answer. And when I actually see myself spinning my wheels and not really getting to where I want to go, I use this tool to create more space in my brain. And when I do that, I get more done in less time with less stress, if you can believe it. And I can take on bigger challenges. I'm more willing to go outside of my comfort zone because I have a bigger reservoir of energy and there are more resources available for my executive functioning. This is basically the space behind your prefrontal cortex here in your forehead. It is the CEO of your brain. It is the executive functioning area of your brain that controls a lot of different stuff. It's important to your working memory. It's important to memory retention. It's important to emotion regulation and working with others, collaborating with others, your social ability. And so through years and years of analyzing fMRIs and brain studies and other psychological studies, the Neuroleadership Institute created this Healthy Mind Platter to represent the 7 areas of your life to prioritize for optimal brain functioning and optimal performance. So these are the 7 areas to prioritize in your schedule if you want to increase your creativity, innovation, efficiency, productivity, and basically your overall well-being and health in general. They are essential for holistic, optimal health and your impact on the world around you. So, as we go over these, there are 3 different categories. 1 is social needs, so that includes connecting time and playtime. 2 is physical needs, which includes physical time and sleep time. And 3 is cognitive needs, which is downtime, focus time, and time in. So I'm going to start first with the social needs, one of which is connecting time. And so this satisfies our social need for connection. While it's often more valued than playtime, both are actually equally important. Connection is vital to us humans because of our evolutionary wiring that predisposes us to seek out social connections in an attempt to increase our chances of survival. It is literally wired into our brain to act this way, and it is a basic need for us almost as much as food, water, and shelter. So not only does social support have beneficial effects on the cardiovascular, endocrine, and immune systems, but satisfying social relationships are also associated with more positive outlooks on life, more secure attachments and interactions with others, more flexibility when confronting psychological challenges, and more efficient restorative behaviors, which is your body's ability to restore itself. So an easy action step to incorporate connecting time into your schedules is to commit to spending time with close and reliable others twice a week for at least an hour each. And an easy tool for accomplishing this is to maximize your time by doing group activities that satisfy both your need for connecting time and physical time. So maybe this could be a game of pickup volleyball or soccer. As long as you focus on these social interactions, you can hit two birds with one stone here. So let's take a little bit of time, take a moment, and jot down some ideas for connecting time activities that you would like to incorporate into your schedules. So for example, I actually have a very in-depth network of business owners that I interact with, and they provide a lot of validating social time for me. So Mollie, how about you share some of your connecting time activities?
Yeah, so I have my go-to best friend who,
Well, we all do, right?
yes, yes, and then folks also who are in community with me in the passion that I have around creating positive impact in the world. So those are two different connections, but one thing that I've just really learned as being critical in that connecting time is to really evaluate if the time that you're spending with folks leaves you feeling uplifted and hopeful and optimistic, or if the time that you're spending with folks actually ends up leaving you feel drained.
Mm,
And to really have an honest evaluation around that, like maybe you're showing up as the giver, like always the listener, always the, that actually takes your energy, and instead of there being an exchange that leaves you also nourished.
mhm.
So to me, whoever that time is, it's really important that we have that lens and reflection about whether or not that relationship is nourishing and uplifting for us.
Totally. I was just talking about this the other day in one of my Facebook lives, is like you have to pay attention to, is this connecting time actually benefiting me or is it not? Because if it's not, let's change some strategies.
Yeah, and sometimes we really love folks that we're in relationship where we are
Totally.
constantly given and being drained. So it can be complex, right? Because sometimes those people who are draining are actually people we really care deeply about. And of course, if people are in times of crisis and great need, of course we're going to show up, to support them in more of a giving role. But I'm talking about like a kind of a chronic pattern of how that time feels, and really
Yeah.
being reflective about that, and really prioritizing your own nourishment and feeling resourced when you
Mhm.
spend time in relationship with others, especially if the amount of time you have that's free is limited.
Yes,
It's so
exactly.
precious. Our time is so precious, and so we
Mhm.
need to create those relationships and prioritize those that are the ones that are going to really sustain our well-being.
Yeah, so hopefully that gives you some ideas for how to look at connecting time. So I'm going to move on to playtime. So on the other hand, this is often seen as an unimportant behavior relegated to the young and immature, but play actually directly contributes to the release of dopamine, which allows all animals in the animal kingdom to cope with the unexpected demands of a potentially threatening and stressful environment. So for us, it's actually a natural reward system that helps enhance our creativity and our capacity to adapt when faced with changing and challenging circumstances. So one thing you can do to prioritize this is to devote at least 2 hours per week to unstructured play. So just do something that makes you happy. Enjoy it and really lean into the joyful activities that you can participate in on a daily or weekly basis. And an easy tool, again, to accomplish this is to use board games as a way to combine playtime and connecting time. There is a way to combine all of these 7 areas so that you're not trying to schedule 7 new blocks of time into your already overloaded schedule, because I personally know that that's impossible. And you can combine these and really streamline your time, making it more efficient and still reap the benefits of these different areas. So for example, I actually like to schedule board game nights or crafting nights with my friends, because board games and crafting represent playtime for me. And they give me a chance to explore and play around and experiment with my imagination in a low risk environment. I've even gotten into Dungeons and Dragons a lot. If you've seen my podcast, I am a total D&D nerd. And it's a great way to indulge in improv and imagination and risk taking in an environment that isn't going to screw other things up in your life either. So dancing, acting, painting, singing, playing instruments, playing with your kids or your pets, all of these can apply as long as you're focused on the playful or explorative aspects. So think about some ideas, jot some ideas for potential playtime activities that you would like to incorporate. And Mollie, do you have any ideas?
Oh yeah. So young ones are our greatest teachers for
Yeah.
playtime is my perspective. And especially as a mom, when I have to spend so much time in like things that have to get done with my kids, when I can actually spend time where I let them be in charge and say, what do you want to do? Right? They are the ones who will lead us into play and creativity in ways that are way beyond where I'm at because I've lost so much of it the older I've gotten. So definitely being led by unstructured time with children, dance, music, putting, just putting the music on in my living room, in my car, singing in my car, going to karaoke, just laughing, humor, comedy, just things that involve music, singing, and the young ones are my go-to.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I actually have dance breaks for myself. If I'm having a particularly rough week or busy week or taxing week, I will put on it just has to be like 3 songs. It doesn't even have to be a long dance break. It's just like 3 songs to get me moving and get me out of that funk. That's actually why I'm creating this group called Joyful Friday Dance Parties. If you're interested, it's a Facebook group. I'm going to be doing a dance party every Friday afternoon to just kind of kick off our weekends right. So that's exactly what I'm talking about here.
That is so awesome. Good for you.
Yeah. All right. So I hope that gives you some ideas. So moving on to physical needs now, we are going to talk about sleep time first. So it is perhaps the most overlooked and undervalued, but the most important area to focus on when the mind and the body are exhausted and mental capacities start fading. Sleep deprivation is considered to be even more dangerous than going without food and water, and has been found to be essential to homeostatic restoration, temperature regulation, tissue repair, immunity, memory processing, and even emotion regulation. So one thing you can do to prioritize sleep time throughout the week is to restrict your work time to 6 to 8 hours a day and get 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night. I'm actually one who has always prioritized my sleep. I've always loved my sleep. My friends in high school used to get really mad at me about it because I slept so much at sleepovers. And I found that 9 hours is actually optimal for me. Yeah, and everyone is different though. And so you need to find something that works for you. Some people need less time, some people need more time. So experiment and find out what your happy spot is. Just make sure that you are consistent and you find a routine that works best for you. And an easy tool to make sure that it goes smoothly and seamlessly is actually to keep the bedroom dark and cool between 65 to 75 degrees and keep all lights at a minimum. So, if you have any of these LED blinking lights that are on a lot of electronics these days or anything like that in the bedroom, they make really handy dandy blackout stickers that you can put on the items. So you can get these online easily from a lot of different places and you just stick them onto the lights and then you don't need to worry about them anymore. So for example, I was once sleeping in a room that had a Wi-Fi router in it. And if you've ever seen a Wi-Fi router, they have blinking lights that just go on all day long, all night long. And it was right next to my bed where my head was. And so I had difficulty sleeping throughout the night because I had these orange lights blinking in my face all night long. And so I got some blackout stickers and I just stuck them over the lights and they completely blocked them out. And so I was able to sleep a lot more soundly and was pretty much just really a happier person overall. So let's think about some potential ideas for sleep time activities that you would like to incorporate. Mollie, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, just one thing that I would add for folks who actually have a hard time falling asleep um, is engaging in meditative or mindfulness practices before bed. So I know that not being on a screen up until the time you go to bed. So there's something about the screen lights that actually keeps us awake. So having a downtime prior to actually trying to sleep. So for some folks, it could be reading, but also different kinds of mindfulness practices. There are many apps and such that can guide us into really just calming our systems and getting away from that like mental squirrel caging that can keep us awake. So those are a couple of thoughts I have about those who either have a hard time falling asleep initially or wake up in the middle of the night and have a hard time going back to sleep.
Totally. Yeah, I actually use melatonin myself as well every night to guarantee that I fall asleep quickly because my brain also has trouble shutting off sometimes. And so I use melatonin, I use lavender oil every now and then, but I've also heard of like CBD and using items like that. It's really finding a mix that works best for you and what feels good for your body, essentially. Yeah, cool. So I hope that gave you some ideas. Moving on to physical time. It refers to time spent working on your body in exercise or other means. So moving your body is critical to improving brain plasticity, which is basically your brain's ability to grow and change, and in improving your immune system and even in improving your overall mood. Exercise also has the capacity to enhance learning and memory, counteract mental decline associated with aging, aid recovery from brain injury or disease, reduce stress and anxiety, alleviate depression, and improve in executive functions such as response speed, working memory, inhibition of inappropriate behavior, and focus. Again, we're talking about this prefrontal cortex here. And they've actually found that in various studies, exercise can be even more effective in treating depression than prescription drugs. So what happens in the brain when you are engaging in physical activities? Your brain is producing this awesome chemical called BDNF, and it's basically Miracle Grow for your brain. It enhances your brain's ability to create neural connections. And so when you exercise before learning something, you are much more primed to then learn the material that you're trying to absorb, because your brain is a lot more primed to make the required neural connections that you need in order to learn the material. And they've done tons of studies over the years with elementary, middle school, and high school kids. They found that if they put PE, physical education, at the beginning of the day, learning improves, test scores improve, there's less aggression in the classrooms, people are in better moods, and they just experience a better school condition overall. And so it's super important to get that physical time into your weekly schedule. And it doesn't have to be insane. So one thing you can do is schedule 2 hours of moderate intensity aerobic activity, 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic activity, or an equivalent mix of the two. So when we're talking about aerobic activity, that's basically how fast your heart is pumping as you are doing these exercises. So the rule of thumb is if you are doing a low heart rate activity, you're going to want more time. If you want a high heart rate activity, then you need less time. So whether that's 2 hours of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity, it's scheduled across the week as well so that you don't have to do it all in one day if you don't want to. But if you hit those markers, you're at a pretty good spot. And an easy tool to make this a priority is to make it fun. Again, you can combine these with dancing with friends, like we talked about, or doing this pickup game of soccer with friends, or just inviting your friends to the gym with you. Remember, you can combine them and try to hit these two birds with one stone. And that's exactly why I created these dance parties as well, because people weren't prioritizing their physical time as much as they intended to, but were procrastinating on it instead. So let's all dance and have fun. So jot some ideas that you have for physical time activities. And Mollie, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, it's so funny because as we're doing this, I'm actually on a recumbent bike pedaling right now. And so if you notice me moving, um, and really what I would say is really just affirming what you said at the end there, Claire, which is to find what is fun for you. So I really, really want to just add a different layer of that, which is to really know yourself and find the physical activity that is aligned with who you know yourself to be. So for example, if you know yourself to be an introvert, right? So you find restoration in solitude, then pick exercise that can be done in solitude if that feels best for you. So I am a walker. I just love to walk on my own. And maybe if you're an introvert, you might want to do some sort of yoga at home with a video, or any kind, or dancing alone by yourself in the living room, right?
I
And
actually
if
have a
you're
really funny idea about this. I'm an introvert and I have a self-service gym that I go to. So I don't have to talk to anyone when I go to the gym.
right, right, right. And if you're social, then make your exercise, if you're an extrovert and the social aspect is what rejuvenates you, then make your exercise about the social interaction, right? So just honor yourself, know what fills you up and what feels recharging for you, and go with that. Don't have this like prescribed thing, like I have to go to the gym in order to exercise in the way that's right. Like, drop all of the any kinds of internal messaging about what you think exercise should or shouldn't be in order to be done right, and honor who you are and go with that.
Mhm. Totally. I love that. Yeah. So hopefully that gave you some ideas, even thinking about our introvertedness and our extrovertedness, it's finding the right formula for you, whatever is best for you. So moving on to cognitive needs, we're going to talk about downtime first. So it is pretty much doing absolutely nothing. This used to be a hard one for me because, hustle 24/7 mentality. And so it's something that I really had to be conscious of when I was incorporating it into my daily schedules and weekly routines. So it's intentionally having no intention. It allows our minds to freely wander with no particular direction, setting the stage for insight and permitting a process called integration, which is a linkage of differentiated parts. And it is especially important when solving complex problems or making complex decisions. Downtime can occur between scheduled activities, or it can be an activity within itself, as long as you disconnect from your linear intentional focus on your environment. This is basically daydreaming. It is having time to just let your mind wander. Like, how much time do you spend throughout the day just taking a moment and daydreaming, or taking a moment and letting your mind wander with no particular intention? So a recommended action item to do is to create a block of time, at least 30 minutes a day, to just be with no particular intention. And an easy way to do this is to let your mind wander as you have your morning coffee, or sit on a park bench during your lunch break without looking at your phone. Phone time is not downtime. Let me put that caveat out there. So just absorb your environment and let your mind wander. Don't focus on anything in particular and let things unfold naturally. I actually schedule about 10 to 20 minutes every morning for downtime before I start my workday, because that's where I let my brain come up to speed with starting for the morning. and it gets out all of its distractions that it has brewing and helps me focus once I do sit down to my desk to work. So take a moment to jot down some potential ideas for downtime activities. And Mollie, do you have any ideas?
Thanks, Claire, for continuing to allow me to add a little bit. You know, I just would share that my most consistent downtime is right when I wake up in the morning. So one thing that I've learned about myself is that I'm a slow to come to the world person. Like some people wake up and they're just like ready to go.
Yeah,
I am not that person. And so actually what I've done is I've scheduled setting my alarm for like 15 minutes or so before I actually need to get out of bed. And I just use those 15 minutes to just lie in bed and stare at my walls and just allow myself to fully wake up, but also just to be in that kind of downtime. And you're right, Claire, so many of the times in those 15 minutes where I'm just lying in bed, their ideas come to me, solutions to things I'm grappling with, my intuition about where to move next in something that I'm deciding come to me in that time. So first thing in the morning before even getting out of bed is my go-to on that.
Yeah, I have my coffee in a chair in this room, actually back here, and I look out the window and I just think about things, whatever comes to mind. I sometimes look at the trees. I sometimes think about work. I sometimes think about my dog. It's like her cuddle time. She knows exactly where to sit in my lap during downtime every single morning. She has her own like specific place that she sits in my chair with me. And yeah, it's fantastic.
No, yeah, she knows her role.
If I sit down in the chair and don't make space for her, she looks at me like we have a deal here. Okay?
Right. You're not holding your end of the bargain there.
She's like, where is my space? My space is supposed to be there. She's
that's awesome.
sitting here. Actually, she knows I'm talking about her.
Yeah.
All right. So hopefully that gave you some ideas. And then moving on to time in. Time in, on the other hand, involves intentional relaxation, reflection, or mindfulness. So this is where we're getting into an intentional use of this time. It is a type of focused training for the mind that uses self-inquiry and self-awareness to achieve self-regulation. So it is a process that aims to decrease sympathetic activation, heart rate, and muscle tension by creating a space between physical, mental, and emotional reactions. So it allows us to adopt and maintain a self-observing attitude. So self-observation is, when done in a non-judgmental and accepting manner, it actually increases our ability to choose our responses instead of succumbing to automatic and potentially problematic physical, mental, and emotional responses. So it gives us pause, literally. And so this can be meditation, it can be prayer. It's basically focusing on your internal states. So notice what is going on inside of you. It's also called interoception, looking inside. And you just take a minute or two to check in with your internal sensations, your internal feelings, your thoughts, your processes. Basically notice them in a non-judgmental and accepting manner. So an easy step to accomplish this is to set aside 15 minutes a day to be in silence with your eyes closed. And an easy tool would be to set an alarm to remind you. So it doesn't really have to be a difficult thing to work into your day-to-day time. Just set a recurring alarm or a recurring appointment in your calendar. I've actually found that it works best for me if I schedule it for right after I eat lunch, because then I'm not tired or hungry, so I can actually really focus on the interoception, the looking inside. And if I do it too late at night, I end up falling asleep. If I do it too early in the morning, I end up falling asleep. So middle of the day is best for me. But again, whatever works best for you. So whenever your reminder does go off, just take 15 minutes to sit there with your eyes closed and focus on your internal space, your internal sensations, your feelings. I've even heard of people doing quick 2 to 5 minute meditations between activities throughout the day, like between meetings or between projects or appointments. It really helps to have the full 15-minute block so that you can really settle in, but some is better than none. So feel free to sneak it in whenever you can, whenever works best for you. So let's take a moment, jot down some potential ideas for time and activities. And Mollie, any ideas?
Yeah, so meditation is a really, really important part of my ongoing practice of wellness. And, one of the things that worked for me to begin was to start small.
Totally.
And this concept really applies to many of the practices that you've talked about, including exercise, which is for some people, if you've never really had this kind of practice in your life, 15 minutes feels like a heck of a long
Yeah,
time to
that sounds
begin
like
with.
a year.
Yeah. And so when I started meditating, I was in the 2 to 5 minute uh, category for sure. And what's important about starting small is that we're more likely to continue if we can be successful and we set goals for ourselves that are attainable and doable than if we try something initially that is a real stretch for us, and we're in that case we're more likely actually to fall off track and quit because it just feels like, oh, that's just too much.
Mhm.
So that's the main thing I would add there, is
Mhm.
just to be kind and gentle with yourself
Totally.
in starting with an attainable amount of time. And what'll happen is that once that becomes a habit, it'll just naturally feel like, huh, I'm ready for more time for
Mhm.
this. And
Mhm.
you step that up when you're ready. So that's the main thought I had about that.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that totally. I think I started at 10 minutes per session for like twice a week. I think that's where I started with my practice. And then I worked up to 3 times a week. And then I worked up to 4 times a week. And now I just do it every weekday at lunch. And I do 20 minutes on my alarm. And when it's done, it's done.
There you go. You're a case in point.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
great.
All right. So moving on to focus time. It is what we in our Western society pretty much tend to focus on and value the most at the expense at the expense of all the other areas. It is usually the most well-known out of these recommendations. And focus time is a unique activity that involves the mindset of being in flow state. So flow state is the perfect combination of challenge and competency. It means that the task that you are doing is not too challenging, but also you are not too competent at completing it. Focus time is very encouraged in today's work environments, and an easy action item that you can do is to take note of when you lose track of time. That means you are in flow state. These are the activities where you hit that perfect balance between competence and challenge. And an easy tool is to jot down those activities and consciously make them part of your weekly schedule so that you can lose yourself in the activity in a way that benefits your mind in an awesome and optionally functional way. This is basically the opposite of multitasking here. Multitasking is very often glorified in today's working environments, but it is actually very taxing. That's I was like, my brain does not want to wrap my head around that word. Taxing for the brain. It causes your brain to want to expend massive amounts of energy in order to rapidly switch between the activities. You will get depleted and you will feel exhausted and actually get less done, even if it feels like you're accomplishing a lot. The quality of your work is going to suffer and you will feel scattered and unfocused and stressed. I definitely know this from personal experience. I am going through a very massive multitasking phase in my business at the moment, and it's no bueno. And so that's why I do flow state activities on the weekends to reset my brain, like writing and other things like that. So take a moment to jot some ideas for focus time activities. And Mollie, any ideas?
You know, I think that this kind of time is so individuated, right? Like
Totally.
what this time could look like for people is so unique based on every individual's unique personality and strengths and skills, and kind of where creative flow comes from. And um, so Yeah, that's the only thing that I want to say is that this one feels very like wide open.
Yeah.
And so I think what's most important is to really remember how you've defined flow, and to be reflective about what it is for you that actually elicits that kind of state
Mhm.
of the losing track of time, the focus, where you're just immersed, right?
Totally, totally.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be different for each person. And like, maybe it's reading, maybe it's writing, maybe it's painting, maybe it's walking or hiking or wherever you feel like you're losing track of time and just are fully immersed in that activity. That's where you've hit flow state and focus time.
Yeah,
So,
the only thing I will just share for myself, because you said this, is connecting with nature
yeah.
and hiking in nature, the redwoods in particular. I live in Oakland, California. There's redwoods here. That's my personal flow experience where
Mhm.
all of those things are hit. Yeah.
Yeah, we get a
Mhm.
lot of that in the Pacific Northwest as well. Like we
Mhm.
have pretty much every climate available within 5 hours of us. So take your pick. All right. So basically, the moral of the story here is I encourage you to take a look at how you assign your time throughout the day to determine which areas you are currently under prioritizing or neglecting. And by doing this, you can intentionally design a life that holistically supports you in your change making efforts. So now let's all take a time to do a healthy mind platter assessment for ourselves. So I'll put the link in the chat here. And I'll put it over here as well. It's interesting. I haven't done one of these for myself in a while. So I'm going to be interested to see how I rank myself. Wow, my numbers are a lot higher than they were the last time around. That is quite validating. All right, so this assessment will give you a great holistic view on how balanced or unbalanced your wellness practices are currently. I hope you had a moment to fill them out for yourself, whether you see this live or for the replay. And now let's pass it back over to Mollie.
Oh, thank you so much, Claire. Well, I just want to reflect back a couple of things that I really appreciate about what you've just shared. And one is the specificity, right? Because the more concrete and specific we can be about tools and practices, the more accessible they are. And so I just really appreciate how very specific you were in offering these different tools and practices. And the other thing I really appreciate about the way that you've presented this information is how it is really based in neuroscience, right? Because I think that there can oftentimes be this narrative about self-care and self-resourcing, that it's in this realm of like, oh, touchy-feely, not necessary, and is, something that people who are kind of more in the woo-woo realm do, but really isn't important for everyone. And in terms of wherever you are in your own productivity and no matter what you're doing. And so I just really appreciate how you've really brought in this brain science,
Mm.
and because I think that validates the essential nature of everything that we're talking about for some people who may kind of even unconsciously have internalized this belief that these things that we're talking about are really kind of secondary and not very important. So
Totally. Thank you.
yeah, so really appreciate that. And so, what I'm going to do right now is really kind of present some understandings or information that really dovetail nicely with what Claire has just offered us, and really affirms everything that Claire just shared. And actually, it's kind of what I'm going to be talking about. Maybe lays it out visually in a different way, but is very much in line with everything that Claire's just shared. And what I want to say before I dive into that is how there can oftentimes be in our process of growth and learning a um, a, a kind of step-by-step process, or um, a path that we first are in a place of having unconscious thoughts, beliefs, inner voices, kind of socialized ways of being
Mm.
that are driving us without our even being aware of it,
Mm.
right? And then in our process of growth and change, what can oftentimes happen is that then we become aware of some new learning that is in our conceptual understanding, like, oh wow, I now understand the importance of X, Y, or Z. But it's really primarily in our intellectual and mind space.
Mm.
And oftentimes, even when we understand something, we experience a disconnect between what we understand and what we're actually able to do.
Mm.
So how we're actually living, the choices that we're making, the kind of presence that we're able to embody. And so what I'm going to talk about right now is, or are, the different kinds of elements of working with ourselves that can move us from the intellectual understanding of something and into the integrated actually doing or becoming in different ways of being. And this goes back to my original story about my self-awareness in that kind of disconnect. And what I'm going to share is rooted in years and years of my own journey of really becoming more aware of how not only I make actual change and transformation within myself and in my externalized life, but also what I've seen and been able to support many, many others in their process of transformational unfolding. And so what I'm going to do here right now is uh, actually, I want to ask Claire if you would be willing to share the Venn diagram slide right now, so I can talk a little bit about it. Thanks, Claire. So what you're seeing here is just a kind of like a different visual layout that is incorporating everything that Claire just talked about. So the Healthy Mind Platter, in many ways, all of the practices that Claire talked about are not exclusively, but primarily fall in this realm of self-resourcing in this top left oval that you see there. So self-resourcing refers to the kinds of ongoing, consistent practices that leave us feeling full, that leave us feeling nourished internally, that leave us inspired, feeling hopeful, feeling optimistic, feeling the possibility of all that we are capable of, right? And so this practice, or these ongoing practices that really center our holistic wellness, is one of the pieces of ongoing, unfolding and connecting with our greatest selves that is so important. And so all of the things that you're seeing in the corners and the kind of white spaces outside of the ovals are just some of the kinds of tools and practices that relate to self-resourcing that Claire's talked a lot about. And what I want to talk a little bit about next is the distinction between what we've really been focusing on a lot in the realm of self-resourcing and another aspect of our growth, which has to do with internal healing work. And what I'm referencing here when I talk about internal healing is, first of all, coming from an acknowledgement and an understanding that all of us in our human experience who have been socialized and taught and loved by other humans who are imperfectly human in their ways of being have experienced some realm of some aspect of challenge and pain, perhaps wounding on a spectrum. So there's some of us who have experienced really traumatic experiences in our life, and others who may not have experienced extreme trauma, but have experienced different forms of interactions with the people closest to us in particular that have caused different internal hurts that we are likely to be still holding patterns in terms of the way that we relate to ourselves and the way that we relate to others that are limiting what we are able to be in the world, how we're able to be with ourselves and in relationship with others, because of the fact that we haven't necessarily fully processed or healed from some of those hurts, regardless of where they fall on a spectrum of severe to not so severe. And sometimes they can be in the form of learning unhealthy patterns in terms of how we communicate, what we speak of and what we don't speak of, that are limiting us as well. And so another aspect of us really being able to live in a liberated way where our thoughts and our behaviors and our beliefs are not constricting what we are able to do has to do with intentionally engaging in different forms of healing work that address what I've just talked about, that actually really kind of face and support us in allowing for some of those most of the time, early experiences that are in the kind of pain and wounding realm to actually move through us and let go of those. Not saying that they're like completely gone, but go through a process where their power over us and the ways in which they unconsciously drive us are actually minimized and really shifted in our experience. And there are so many different kinds of healing modalities, and I've put some of them here. Some of them have to do with talking, like talk therapy. Reevaluation counseling is another form of emotional healing that is like very low to cost to free. And then there are other healing modalities that are really body based. So somatic healings, the soma is referencing the wholeness and the interconnection of the body, the heart, the mind, and the spirit. So there are healing modalities that are very body based, and some that are energy kinds of healing. Reiki is an energy healing. There are others like tapping that integrate affirmative messages and somatic tapping at energy centers in our body. There's another one here that I referenced, the traumatic release exercises, which is very body based and doesn't even involve talking at all. So there are so many different ways. There are sound healing practices that people do. So there's such a wide variety of healing modalities out there that are also an important, if we're looking to be on this road of transforming ourselves, that internal healing work is a real critical part of it. So what I want to do now is go up to the upper right-hand corner of this diagram to talk about self-awareness. And this is really connected to part of what Claire was talking about with the inward time and the meditative and mindfulness kinds of practices. But what I want to just make a little bit of a distinction around here is that many of mindfulness and meditative practices actually serve to cultivate and expand our self-awareness. So oftentimes people think of mindfulness practices as being something that we do in order to center ourselves. And some people think that it makes us feel more at peace, which it may or may not. But what I really want to name here is that mindfulness practices have so many things to teach us that go beyond this, I think, initial or maybe superficial narrative of like having a calming effect on us, which again, I want to just name that meditation doesn't always do that for us. But one of the huge benefits of mindfulness and meditative practices, even simple breath meditation of focusing on breath, is that what it does in, for example, just focusing on our breathing, and what it does is that we begin to constantly notice how our thoughts distract us from our capacity to focus on breath, which translates into how our thoughts are constantly actually distracting us from being able to be fully present to what is happening right now. And so that cultivating of self-awareness, of noticing our thoughts, really noticing what emotions are present in any given moment, noticing how our bodies are feeling, because oftentimes there's a connection between sensation in our body and our emotions, that kind of self-awareness is actually a key building block for us being able to shift anything that we're doing. Because how can we change anything within us if we can't see it? If we aren't aware that it's in there operating, right? So this realm of developing our own self-awareness is it's like the groundwork for us being able to change and transform anything we're doing. And so there in the white portion there, and those are some, just a few practices that can cultivate that. So written reflective practices can also cultivate our self-awareness. Journaling, where we're just getting our thoughts and our emotions out on paper, is another way of heightening our awareness. Like when I journal and I just let it flow out of me, there are these aha moments that I have about like, wow, I didn't realize I was that overwhelmed, or I didn't realize I was that sad. So we can cultivate our self-awareness through written reflective practice as well. And finally, what I want to talk about here is the lower right-hand oval, which is really, really critical, especially for those of us who are engaged in any work that has to do with having the intention of making positive impact on the world and others and communities and schools and places of care and any field where we really are caring about equity and justice in the world. So there's really no way that we can effectively engage in those realms of work if we are not also engaging in ongoing education and expanding self-awareness related to how we have been conditioned around the many isms that exist in our society. And Claire, would you be willing to show that intersectionality wheel next, so I could just talk a little bit about that? So I'm sure that many of you are aware of the realities of the intersectional aspects of identity. But what I want to just say very briefly here is that there are so many different aspects of who we are that that have experienced different either kind of privileged ways of walking through the world, where aspects of our identity are considered to be the right way or normal, or are usually in positions of social or institutional power. And then there are other aspects of our identity that also may fall into the experience of actually being marginalized in society in subtle and overt ways. So through interpersonal interaction, through institutional patterns, and the systems that we are all living within every day: educational system, criminal justice, economic system, political system, all of the larger institutions that impact us. For many of us, there is this complex interweaving of having experience of having dominant aspects of experience and also marginalized ones. And so no matter who we are, it is essential in terms, if we're talking about being on a path of really liberating ourselves from the thoughts, the beliefs, the actions, the patterns, the ways of being that limit us, that we are doing ongoing work about really increasing our awareness around how these aspects of our identity have been impacting us. And for many of us, that involves healing work that is around how we've been marginalized in our experience. And for others of us who are on that privileged aspect of our different pieces of our identity, there's also work that we need to do around really reclaiming our humanity in becoming more and more aware of how, in being part of the kind of dominant group, that we have also been socialized to desensitize ourselves to the suffering of others and perpetuate the dominance and the continued oppression, oftentimes without being even aware or conscious of it. So there's just so much learning and work internally to be done in this realm and around all of these different aspects of our identity. And so, Claire, if you wouldn't mind going back to the Venn diagram, I want to just kind of end with talking about this larger yellow oval here that's here, which is connected to, the idea of the connection time that Claire talked about. But I want to talk about this in a little bit of a different way, because the way that I understand Claire's connection time really had to do with being in connection with individuals who lift our spirits. And I know Claire talked about being a part of a professional community as well. And one really key piece to us continuing to evolve is to be in connection and community with people who are supporting, who are on similar journeys of personal transformation themselves, and who can be an ongoing system of support for us. Because in engaging in all of the different things that Claire and I have talked about, it is a lot, right? And we will make mistakes and we'll fall off of our routines, and we will just face challenges and hurdles that we just feel like we don't know how to face. And the only way that we are able to keep going, especially those of us who are in the work of really liberating ourselves and others from systems of oppression, is to have a community of folks who can be having our backs at those times when we are at our lowest, and we need the support of others to keep going and to come back to hope when we're feeling hopeless, for example. And so that really finding and nourishing and building our own systems of community, ongoing community and support who are on this path of this kind of transformation is essential. And another thing that I want to just quote from Rita Shimon, who I showed at the beginning, is she always tells us that we cannot do this work alone. We cannot. And so even me as an introvert, right, we can value and protect that alone time for us and recognize the need for community at the same time. And so what I have here in this Venn diagram is really the acknowledgement of when all of these things are coming together and intersecting, is when we are able to really step more powerfully into our own self-liberation, into ways of being that are really aligned with our full empowerment. And I have the word flow in here, which I'm using actually in a different way than Claire did. And I totally affirm Claire's definition of flow and want to just make a distinction here, which is that what I'm referring to in terms of an experience of flow in this context is when we are in a place of being grounded in an experience of our wisdom, of our intuition, where we effectively respond to any situation that's arising, right? So when, for example, some of these aspects of our internal work are are still hindering us, when challenge and different kinds of situations arise, we can experience a stuckness, like a paralysis, like, oh, like we get re-stimulated, we get triggered emotionally by certain kinds of circumstances that leave us and others stuck. And so what I'm proposing here is that when we engage in the intersection of all of these realms of experience and support and practice, that the flow that we experience is actually is the opposite of paralysis and being stuck, and actually being fully present to, flexible, being able to hold all that comes in any given moment and forge the connection and the relationship that's going to build powerful communities. And so that's what I'm referring to as flow here. So I in my practice as a life coach and a facilitator, what I love to do is to just really delve into with folks, and you can take the Venn diagram now off, Claire, thank you for showing that, is to really delve into the specific kinds of resources and tools and practices and ways of being with ourselves and others that actually cultivate this transformational evolution and really support us. Really what I'm talking about is on our journeys of self-actualization. And so that was most of really what I wanted to share today. And I want to pass it back to Claire, but just mention that one of the things that I wanted to leave you with today are some ongoing resources for you. So we'll give you a link for that in a minute, but Claire, I wanted to just pass it back to you.
Yeah, give me 1 second while I put it in chat.
Oh, great. Yeah. So are you going to put the link for the resources that I've compiled? Oh, thanks.
I just
Yeah.
put it
So
in.
I'll just say briefly that just so that you have more, like if anything that I've talked about feels like I want to know more about these these things, um, then please use the link to this document that I've compiled that has both online resources in these different realms of ongoing transformational um, growth. And in addition, books, readings that are also in these different realms so that you can really kind of explore those on your own and hopefully continue your own journeys if anything that I've said just feels like it resonates with where you are in your own path.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm literally bookmarking it right this moment because we've already had the talk. You're the one that introduced me to why are all the Black kids sitting together in the cafeteria. I posted it about it on my Facebook, and we had some really interesting conversations come out of it. So this is where I got it, folks. This is the person.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yes, Beverly Daniel Tatum, the author of that book, is just an amazing, wise educator and writer. And there's so many just wise and amazing people out there to learn from. So I'm so grateful because I just want to acknowledge that everything that I've shared has come from the wisdom and the teaching and the support and the guidance of others. And so we all need that. We all need that. And so grateful to have learned from so many others.
Totally. Like everyone knows something that we don't. Like we
Mm-hmm.
have to tap into the collective knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
not just sometimes, but all the time.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope this has been instructive for all of you in the audience for you today. Make sure to catch me on this profile for more entertaining and educational Facebook Lives. And please like, comment, share, and subscribe if you're on YouTube, if you're picking up what we're putting down here. So for me, if you feel like you want more support in implementing these teachings into your daily, weekly, monthly schedules, I actually do have a schedule refresh intensive where we do a deep dive into the 7 areas of the Healthy Mind Platter, as well as assess your current schedule and customize it based on your unique goals, responsibilities, and needs. It is a 2.5-hour session that will instantly increase your productivity, innovation, creativity, efficiency, wellness, and overall performance. So I'll drop the link in chat for that as well. And if you are interested in learning more about the work that Mollie does for individuals and groups, I will drop her contact information as well. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much, Claire. I want to just mention that I am located in Oakland, California, and I work with folks virtually and in person, and really just love both of those formats. So I just encourage you, even if you're far away, and anything that I've said has felt useful to you, to reach out, and I'm happy to be a continued resource in any kind of way to pass along more resources and to explore any possibilities of working individually or as a facilitator for groups that you're a part of. So feel free to reach out.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. And then to wrap it up, please remember that your authentic self is extraordinary. It is wonderful, and you owe it to yourself to create the elevated life that you know you are capable of. So reach out to us for more, and we look forward to cheering you on. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much, Claire.